I'm Sarah Jensen, editor of OEM Off Highway, and welcome to Design and Engineering Insights. Today, I'll be speaking with Proemion about the trends it's seeing in telematics technology and how that is helping with the continued growth of data, connectivity, and IoT in the heavy equipment industry. So thank you, Roger, for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
So maybe if we could start, if you could kind of go over some of the specific trends regarding the use of telematics in heavy equipment, the heavy equipment industries that you're currently seeing.
Sure. I think by now, telematics is no longer an option anymore, but it should be part of the standard package delivered by the OEM. If we look at how digital transformation is accelerating due to the global pandemic, companies are forced to rethink their operations, and while doing so, they radically embrace technology. Another aspect is that the millennials are becoming more influential. These are the first generation that are born in a connected world, and they have a completely different stance towards technology compared to generation X and Y. And another aspect is that telematics can help to improve the customer experience. And when I talk about the customer experience, basically it means your ability to be awesome to your customer. And that means how do your customers get more out of your products, but also how do you deliver a better service once they have bought the product. And I think telematics can help on all different fronts. We also see a shift from direct to indirect monetization. In a recent discussion with Gartner, they pointed out that the automotive companies are seeing a shift from the sale of subscription licenses to having more focus on cost avoidance and data-driven decision-making, such as data-driven product development, but also in sales and marketing. We also see that there's an increasing demand for functionality that goes beyond simple trackers, which ties back to that, how do I avoid cost? How do I incorporate the insight in my day-to-day decision-making? And another aspect that we see a lot of demand for is remote diagnostics, repair, and maintenance. This really helps to cut down on both the travel and the labor costs. And lastly, I think the support for open standards such as AEMP are becoming more and more of interest to OEMs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so how do you guys foresee telematics systems aiding with the growing use of data connectivity and IoT implementation in the heavy equipment industries?
Okay, so when we talk about the heavy equipment industry, we differentiate between three entities. At first we have the OEM, then there's the dealer, and there's the machine owner. Now each of these entities have different objectives, and those are driven by different use cases. So as a machine owner, they primarily care about either their machine, fleet, or operator efficiency. So they want to extend the lifespan of their machine, maximize the productivity, which includes reducing downtime to the bare minimum, and protect it against theft. Now, both dealers and machine owners may operate machines from different OEMs, so they want to have a single view of their entire fleet. So they're looking for open standards as well. In addition, dealers may want to incorporate new business models that are focused on pay-per-use, for example. Getting the machine hours and connecting that to a billing system to automate your billing process, that's of interest to them. And lastly, we have the OEM. Now, the OEM is driven by two forces. On the one hand, they're driven by the market demand, which is generated by the dealers and the machine owners. So they need to come up with USPs that is of interest to these groups, but on the other hand, there's a huge potential for the OEM themselves as well. When we talk about data-driven product development, you can use the actual machine data to gain insights on how to improve your future product development. If you look at data-driven marketing, for example. You know, how do you make promises as a company that you know you can keep based on the actual machine data that you've collected from thousands of machines? But also, if you look at sales, how can a salesperson add more personalization in the sales process by looking at, for example, a machine owner saying, you know, you have 5 machines, 2 of a smaller capacity, 3 of a larger capacity, but basically they all have the same throughput. Now you can make a personalized recommendation that is fit to that machine owner's specific need, and that's really powerful. Yeah. And lastly, you know, they can reduce the way they perform their service. They can reduce downtime, but also they can improve the quality of their service by, you know, if you're able to do remote diagnostics, you can determine what the likelihood is of a certain part breaking down, so that when you turn up on site, you ensure that you have the right part on you, so that, you know, the customer doesn't have to come in twice because initially you brought the wrong part.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And are you guys seeing, are there any challenges associated with implementing these types of technologies that you guys are seeing in the industry, or are there ways that those challenges, if you are seeing them, can be overcome?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for OEMs is to justify the efforts to deliver connectivity. And the reason for this being that, you know, telematics is not part of their core business. So they don't have the skills. It's a high investment to develop and maintain your own solution. And as technology, you know, is evolving constantly, you need to go through recertification programs as well. And, you know, there's a lot of complexity in providing the complete infrastructure. So if I recall correctly, from one of the last year's telematics reports, 70% of the total number of off-highway vehicle telematics systems across construction, mining, forestry, and agriculture is globally covered by 10% of the equipment manufacturers. So these companies also went through these challenges, but they have the volumes and the capital to justify building their own solutions. For the smaller OEMs, there's a lot of risk involved building your own solution, and if you then don't have the large volumes to back it up, it's a risky investment. So to overcome this, I would recommend the smaller OEMs to look for a partner. Look for a service provider that can not only deliver on your current, but also your future requirements. And then enter a proof of concept with them. And once you feel comfortable that they can deliver on their promises, start executing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then would Proemion be a company that then would work with those OEMs and to help them with those technologies?
Yeah, that's exactly where, we want to bridge the gap. We want to be that solution partner where we deliver an end-to-end solution. So we take care of the hardware. We have our cloud offering, and we also have our data portal where OEM dealer and customer can consume the data so that they can make better informed decisions. But we also have an API first approach, so that, for example, an OEM that says, listen, I don't want to use your portal, I want to get the data directly into my systems, they can use our API approach to get the data directly into their own system. Mm-hmm. So if we look at some other challenges, I think that another challenge that we often see is that, the proof of concepts are being treated like complete projects. And while decision makers need assurance that the solution works, stuffing as many use cases into a POC is seldom going to give you the desired outcome. A POC is basically a short implementation to confirm, that an idea or concept, has potential. So, if you get into an 18 to 24 month POC, you're going to add a lot of risk because people are going to change positions. The decision makers are not seeing results in the year that the engagement was started, so they are starting to lose focus, and slowly the momentum dies, and so does your POC. So, and all of this time that you were in this POC, you delivered zero value to your organization. So I come from an agile background, and I believe in, fast deployment, and then iteratively add value to it. So what we recommend to companies is that, start by identifying your priorities, including the business and technical requirements. Because I think this is very important. Because if the business, sets their requirements very high, but your technical teams, cannot accommodate their needs, there's a huge mismatch, and you will not get to the desired outcome. So once you have identified your priorities, you need to rank them in terms of feasibility, viability, and availability. And if you engage with a service provider, then confirm that all your priorities can be met. They don't need to be met all at once, but focus on the first two and enter a POC with for those. Make sure that your success criteria are clearly defined and that you know how you want to measure those. And then at the end of the POC, use those criteria to assess whether the outcome was successful or not, and then decide how to move forward.
Okay.
Now, there's one more challenge that we see is that, tying the insights from the machine data to the real business process. This also ties back to the previous point. If you're in a POC and you want to stuff as many use cases in there, chances are that you're not going to tie the data all the way to the end of the process. Because for me, the real value sits when a service agent, for example, or someone that does the service planning, sees their time being reduced by data being injected into their process and maybe some steps being digitalized. That's where the real value ends. It's not just getting the productivity hours of the machine. That's the easy part. It's integrating the data into the back-end processes. That's where the value, really starts to become impactful.
Right. Okay. So how do you guys see these technologies continuing to progress in the coming years? Is it safe to assume it's going to continue to grow and become more prevalent, or are there any further advancements you foresee coming?
Yeah, the applicability of telematics, we only see growing further. Now, as technologies advance, autonomous driving, sensoring are being considered, as well as 5G. Though, when we look at the heavy equipment industry, the machines will not always be located at sites where 5G coverage, is available. It will take years before we have that broad coverage. So, for the meantime, we have a lot of focus on edge computing as well, so that we only, transmit the relevant data over the network, so that we guarantee the best delivery of that data. I think also one of the things that we see more and more of going forward is, operational insights. It's really that whole ecosystem will be more and more interconnected with the telematics data. So where you see the telematics data being integrated with existing business data and that process become digitalized. That's where we see the future going.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining me today and providing some insight into what the company is seeing regarding these technologies.
It was my pleasure.